friends are acting strange. They shake their heads, they say I've changed. Well, something's lost, but something's gained in living every day. I've looked at life from both sides now, from win and lose, and still somehow it's life's illusions I recall. I really don't know life.
With liberty and justice for all.
All right, I'd like to thank everybody for coming. Roll call. Phil?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Courtney?
Yes.
And Ken, I'm here. Mark, would you like to take care of your crew?
I certainly would. Roll call Clinton,
Yes.
roll call Gordon.
Here.
Roll call Keith. Here. So we have,
Everybody's here.
that's it, everybody.
You forgot me?
Yep.
Oh, that's right.
I won't.
He's still here.
That's why I'm in
He's
the
in the
middle.
middle.
You're in the board, right?
I'm on
still
both
here.
sides.
Okay.
All right. Can I get a motion to adopt this short agenda? Any additions or deletions or?
We're going to delete the attorney.
Well, yeah, pretty much.
I did talk to, him twice. I talked to him prior to the meeting. My understanding he was gonna be here. I talked to him today. He said nobody told him to be here. So, I don't know who arranged it, but he didn't know. So, but he did say the document that we have in front of us is essentially everything we need to do. It describes exactly where we're at, why we're at, and what we need to do to go forward.
So we're good with this agenda then?
We're good with this agenda.
Okay. Can I get a motion or to adopt the agenda? Motion and second.
I'll make it.
I'll second.
All in favor? Opposed? All right. Yes, Mr. Graham. There she is. So what we were gonna do was question and answer between Mr. Graham, the township, the planning commission, and anybody in the audience, and since he's not here, we can skinny right down to public comment. That's about all we have left.
Well, I think it'd be appropriate to explain why we are here. You know, the planning commission, per the Zoning and Enabling Act, is in charge of zoning. The board did the marijuana ordinance. The planning commission wasn't involved with it. But the board was told that the planning commission has to do the zoning. On May 23rd of 2022, the board was handed proposed zoning, which would exclude R1, and guys correct me if I'm wrong, R1, R2, C1, and Old Town. At that time, the board didn't have enough time, the planning commission didn't have enough time to go through it, so we decided we weren't gonna approve it.
Can I mention something here real quick?
Go.
It's written right here, May 23rd, 2022, Township Planning Commission minutes reflect that a motion was made to recommend approval of the amendment, but this motion failed 2-1, with one member absent and one member abstaining. From a legal perspective, the failure of the motion to recommend approval does not mean the Township Planning Commission recommended not to approve the proposed amendment. Rather, the failure of the motion merely meant that no decision was made concerning the Planning Commission's statutory duty to recommend approval or non-approval of proposed amendment.
So this is Groundhog Day, we're doing it all over again. So that's where we're at, and
Our mistake when we denied it on May 23rd was not making a motion to deny it. It's all in the legalese.
right.
And then we did this again in November. November 1st, 2022, Planning Commission minutes. These minutes reflect the Planning Commission held a public hearing. The minutes, however, do not specifically state the purpose of the public hearing. Having said that, however, I believe the purpose of the public hearing was a new proposed zoning ordinance amendment concerning marijuana establishments. It's perfectly lawful for the Planning Commission to propose a new zoning ordinance amendment addressing marijuana establishments that's different from the ordinance 2206, which the Planning Commission held a public hearing on May 23rd. The motion was made at November 1st meeting to include specified definitions in the amendment to specify zoning districts where the establishments would be authorized. The motion failed on a vote of 1-3 with one absentee. There was no motion passed. It provided recommendation from the Planning Commission one way or the other to the Township Board on the proposed zoning ordinance amendment. To complete the process on this new zoning ordinance amendment, the Planning Commission must finalize the provisions in the new amendment and must pass a motion making a recommendation to the Township Board either to approve or not to approve the new amendment. This new amendment must then be submitted to the county for review. If the county follows the same procedure it did in June, the County Board of Commissioners can waive its review of the new amendment. So what happened is on May 23rd, we voted on the agenda, 0622, which is the original ordinance zoning language to allow marijuana establishments in C2 industrial.
And by definition, what you don't include, which is R1, R2, Old Town and C1 is not included.
With that original
Correct.
motion.
But just so everybody understands, we approved it, the board agreed with us 4-1 to deny it. So we're at the point now where we're back to the same one in May, which includes, those areas being approved. Those areas not listed and approved are R1, R2, C1, and Old Town. That's what we're voting on tonight.
What's these?
The recommendation to the board.
Correct. Correct.
Can I, in November, whose responsibility was it with that vote to push it to the board then?
We should have made a motion to approve it or a motion to deny it, not just bring it up for motion and then not make a decision. And that's what we did. We just didn't make it, it failed to pass, which means it didn't happen basically. So, that's where we made our mistake.
It was in the verbiage for the motion then?
Yes. We used the wrong language in our motion.
Okay.
We should have,
Okay.
right then, when it wasn't gonna pass that way, we should have gone back and made a new motion to deny the amendment, and then voted on that.
Okay. And whose responsibility is it to come up with the verbiage of these motions then? Should it always go through the attorney then?
Well, the most time it goes through the planning commission. I haven't been in this position before. Otherwise, I may have caught it. It would be an attorney thing, but we shouldn't need to run an attorney by every motion of the planning commission. In this case, it was a hot button issue, and it's being watched under a microscope, and that's what happened there. We will make sure that it doesn't happen in the future. If we have a motion in front of us and it just dies, we'll make another motion to deny it or whatever.
But so then, back to the board, when you voted against it 4-1, was your language correct in voting it down? Because if it was, then why would there even be a vote on this again? Because the board voted it down also.
Because it wasn't proper procedure from the planning commission to the board.
And that's what the attorney has here. So now
Right.
it's just a redo.
The attorney explained it to me, and this is 10 days ago, as a technicality. I said, so basically you're saying, we denied it, and that's what the intent was, but because we didn't make a separate motion to deny it, that's why we have to do this all over again. But the board did deny it, 4-1. So there, you can have one no call, if you want to use a football analogy, and then no flag. And then the second one was that the board denied it and denied the zoning as it stood. But because it wasn't denied at the planning commission, it has to come back. But the board is on record as having agreed with the planning commission and denying it at that time.
What exactly did the planning,
voted
or did
no.
the board deny? Did they deny the location, or you're saying they denied the idea of having the marijuana in the town?
Neither.
What the board did is, as you know, under the zoning and enabling act, what the board did is basically agreed with the planning commission that it should be denied for the zoning area recommended, which would be everywhere but R1, R2, Old Town, and C1. That's what the board agreed to.
We voted no on that because you made a very convincing argument that that needed to go before the attorney before a vote was done. And that's why it was voted down at that meeting, so that we could then consult with the attorney and see where we would go from there. That's why we voted it down. It was not that we agreed, nor did we disagree. You made the convincing argument that we should discuss this with the attorney, and that is what we did.
But what you should have done in that case is tabled it, and that's not what you did.
Well, we all make mistakes. You guys made mistakes, we made mistakes. We're now at a point where
Okay, I
we
just
just
wanna-
need to
I-
go
I-
through it.
I just want to be clear, you guys voted it down. Whatever argument I made, that's irrelevant. It was voted down. If you thought that the attorney was the big issue, you should have tabled it until the attorney reviewed it, and he didn't do that.
Irrespective, we have had issues that brought us to that point, Mark. And that stems way back. It's not recent. And because of that, there's been a lot of back and forth about doing it right. That, in fact, was not doing it right. It had to be redone. I'm talking about these votes that were done. And it's still not done because it's still not correct until we get done with tonight.
Correct.
Then it will be proper. So what's happened in the past at this point is not really an argument. It's a matter of fact.
Need to
It's
get
a
over
matter
it.
of judgment.
Plain and simple. May I interject? If we're trying to do things right, and the lawyer was supposed to be here tonight to answer questions to the public, and was never invited, how is that showing the public we're trying to do things right?
Can I speak?
Lindsay can
Sorry,
speak on
I'm back
this.
here, I'm just taking minutes. So, let me just tell you the timeline of how this all happened, okay? After this memo came out, and there's copies for everybody back there, at the very end of it, it was under the attorney's suggestion that a joint meeting be had with the attorney, the board, and the planning commission. So, the board requested to have a joint meeting, so I emailed Mark. Mark said, let me check with other PC members. That was on November 17th. On November 18th, the attorney, Mr. Graham, wrote us back and said, December 12th works for me. I was here because the carpets were getting cleaned, and Mark called, and Mark said, I just talked to the attorney, December 12th at 5 o'clock. I said, not a problem, I'll make your notice for the door. I made the notice for the door. I made the notice on Mark's word that he scheduled the meeting December 12th at 5 o'clock with the attorney. That's it.
I confirmed the attorney is the one that said
So
that he
it,
would be here, so somebody
Right.
told the attorney to be here.
right.
It wasn't
So
me. I
we
simply
just want that to
confirmed
be
it.
very clear.
Okay, 'cause it
I
doesn't
want to
look
clear
right.
my name, I want to
Right,
clear
no,
the board's
absolutely.
name and the planning commission's name, that the township as a whole did not drop the ball on this attorney being here at 5 o'clock. Mr. Graham essentially double booked himself. When he got that phone call from Mark, he did not put it on his schedule apparently, he didn't pass that word along to his secretary. We immediately noticed it out to make everything legal. Then upon, thankfully, Craig's post, or else I would have never have known that the attorney was not going to be here. After that, me and Mark contacted each other. he got a hold of Mr. Graham, and Mr. Graham said, no, I got a 3-hour meeting on Monday, I'm not gonna be there. That's how it
Thank you for
happened.
clarifying.
As far as the attorney being present, he has sent us a 5-page document on exactly what we need to do to be legal beagle here. I think that's enough to replace his presence. I mean, he could be here reading it to us.
Could also be fielding questions, was the idea.
Yeah.
Well, that was, yeah. But the idea, you know, we keep talking about, we've been doing this so much, I know the planning commission is fatigued. I'm sure the board's fatigued by this entire thing. But we're back to May 23rd, and we're essentially saying that zoning, 2022-06, is the one we're gonna be voting on when this meeting adjourns and the planning commission adjourns on its own to vote on that. And the vote is either gonna be to approve it with the zoning as of May 23rd, and that's 2022-06, or to deny it. And then it goes, in either case, it goes to the board, and the board can do whatever they want from there.
The attorney says right here, the following actions must be taken. The Township Planning Commission must meet and accomplish the following actions. The Planning Commission must pass a motion recommending the Township Board that zoning ordinance amendment 2206, which is the original May one,
Correct.
either be enacted or not enacted. Second thing, the Planning Commission must complete the provisions of the new zoning ordinance amendment that was subject to the November 1st public hearing. Once the provisions of the new zoning ordinance amendment are completed, the Planning Commission must pass a motion recommending to the board that the new amendment either be enacted or not enacted. Them two things he's asking for the
Correct.
November 1st and the October 23rd.
Correct, and the reason, and in between that November 1st meeting, the proposed new zoning included C1 in Old Town. And
The November 1st one.
correct. And that, so it was a change from the original one.
Yes.
So essentially, what's being recommended is we go back to the original one, May 23rd, and we approve those areas that are included and excluded by definition, which would be R1, R2, C1, and Old Town. And they've also passed on a motion, if the planning commission denies it, that the board overrule the planning commission and go back and approve the original 2022-06, which means, and this all came up, because a permit was issued in an area that wasn't even considered, which is Old Town C1. This is why we're going through this entire thing again. So if what the attorney is saying, and the board overrides us, if we agree, then fine, those areas that are excluded are still excluded. The applicant has no recourse other than a, not a recall, but referendum. And a referendum means that, and as certain people have said on both boards, let the people decide. So referendum would let people vote on it, whether that use would be permitted. And only that use for only that site.
Okay, with the planning commission making a decision tonight, this is the way I understand it, and it does not include Old Town or C2.
C1.
There's
I'm sorry.
two things to be presented to the planning commission tonight. One is the original one, which is not allowed anywhere in C1 or downtown, okay? And then the November 1st one allows them in downtown.
Okay.
Okay, that's the two things.
So
that we
those
go-
are the two things you're gonna decide.
Yeah, now, once we decide, either way, how we decide that, the township board takes it from there,
Exactly, and
and
can
they
add to
decide
it-
what they do from that.
Right,
They
but,
can add to it or take away.
They can.
right.
So
They can do whatever they want.
everybody has to understand that the board makes the final decision.
Number 4, if the
That's what I wanna
township
clear up,
board,
that's all I
yeah,
wanna clear up.
Right.
if the township board's not satisfied with either of the proposed zoning ordinance amendments, it can refer the matter back to the planning commission. The planning commission can then take comments from the township board and develop a third option. This third option needs to be subject to new public hearings and county reviews before it goes back to the township board again.
Correct, and just to correct you on one thing, Gordon, we're talking about the original 2021-06,
Mhm.
or denial, we are not talking about the November 1st one.
He mentions November first
Yeah.
one in his document here.
Yeah.
I talked to him and he said, no, we're talking about one or the other.
Okay,
This written document says both.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I talked to the attorney, so.
Well, this is
My-
written,
my-
this is written by the attorney.
Right.
The motion,
Irrespective of
the
what-
motion from the attorney gives us two options.
Okay.
And that's all it gives us, and the option is to accept the original one,
enact or not enact?
yeah, or to deny it. That's the only two options we have. He made that perfectly clear to me.
And that is the 06-22,
Correct,
which does not allow it in Old Town or,
correct,
yeah, it's just the definitions and then
So you're re-voting on that tonight?
correct.
on the May 23rd
Okay.
motion.
And in November?
No.
No.
The May- If the May passes, you don't need the other one.
But
So
just,
the November one become the
Just
true
die.
thing if you don't address that again?
Well, I mean, that's a great question, because if we deny it very specifically tonight, we're only denying the one, the board can then take it up and say, okay, we wanted the November one. And then, but they have to go through the entire process again of noticing it and all that.
We have to go through the process.
Well, all of us have to
Yeah.
go through the process.
That's not the way is that the way you understood it?
Yeah, unless.
Yes.
Yeah, unless, say, 2022-06 gets motion tonight and then fails at the planning commission, as far as does not get passing votes, whatever motion gets passed tonight, if it's the motion that is for 2022-06 and you get a 3-2, a 4-1, a 5-0, then that's the planning commission's recommendation. So it doesn't matter what the motion is from planning commission, as long as it gets passed.
Right.
Then that's the true recommendation.
And the recommendation, which I've read, and Phil has, we're the only ones that got copies of it. If the planning commission denies it, the recommendation for the board is to approve 2022-06, which is the original zoning, which excludes Old Town, C1, R1, and R2. That's the attorney's, verbatim explanation of it.
okay, Mark, I have a question for you. So you decide on the zoning tonight, no matter which way you vote. My understanding, make sure it's clear, goes to the board can make changes and vote on the marijuana one way or the other. Or does it have to go, when you guys go to the board, then back to you guys again?
We're recommending body, so
Okay.
what we recommend to the board, they take with,
Okay, then
Right.
that's the last
Yeah.
thing
Right,
as
but-
far as the planning commission goes.
Right, and I think we've
Okay.
all spent way too much time on this,
Well, I'm just trying to.
No, I'm
clarify
just
more.
telling you, we've done a lot of research because I wanna make sure we do this right.
That's right.
So the bottom line is, what the attorney said is if the planning commission tonight approves the original zoning with those exclusions, the board should therefore approve it also. If the planning commission turns it down, the board should go back to the original zoning and vote on that. And if they wanna change anything, then
They can do that.
it's a redo.
yeah, we go back.
It goes,
Yes.
it goes back,
It goes back to the planning commission?
correct.
Yes.
Really?
It's noticed
Okay.
and, yeah.
Okay. Well, that's what I'm trying to clarify. How many steps we gotta go here?
No,
and How many
it's,
steps we go here?
it's a good question because it's really confusing,
Okay.
right?
I was just under the impression that once you made a decision, it goes to the board makes a decision if they wanna add or subtract, and they vote on it.
If they wanna add or subtract, then they're gonna have to come up, we're gonna have to goes back to the planning commission.
Okay, that was my mistake. I didn't think that- Okay. Just wanna clarify it, so I know.
No, it's confusing to all of us.
The planning commission's not the final authority on this, the township board is.
That's right.
We're just the recommending body.
Okay,
But the way the law is, we have to make a recommendation.
okay.
Correct.
One way or
Right.
the other, you have to make a recommendation.
Correct.
Period.
Yes.
Before you leave
And
tonight.
that's what we failed to do is make a recommendation.
Right. I
We
remember
just had
that.
a series of failed votes.
Yeah, I'll get you, Craig.
One of the other prior meetings, there was a discussion between Gordon and I think Phil, that if things didn't go right, they could use a nuclear option. I'd like to know what that nuclear option is.
That's why they ignore our recommendation entirely and do what they'd like to do.
So they're gonna circumvent the planning commission.
Well, not circumvent, we've done our duty, we've made our recommendation,
Well,
they
yeah,
don't
but
like our recommendation.
If they're not gonna follow your recommendations, then why are
you?
you here, you know?
Well, here's the thing, is we are a recommending body, it's different, you know, I was on, planning commission board for 22 years downstate. Planning commissions basically make recommendations, the board makes all the decisions. In northern Michigan, I was told it's done differently. The planning commission basically makes the recommendation, and the board either approves or denies it. And I was told the reason why they do it this way, which I don't agree with, is it takes the heat off the board. So the planning commission, basically, that's why I call us the Marines, we take the heat for the decision, and then the board simply approves or denies it. It's a different way that I'm used to too, but the bottom line is, you know, whether we, and this is where the legalese gets into it, and this is where I've been involved in a witness for the government against the township, where the township lost $16 million. Oakland Township versus Mosuri, look it up. And that's where they ignored the planning commission, and because of that, it ended up in a huge lawsuit. So if they ignore the planning commission, they're allowed to do so, but again, you know, be careful what you wish for.
Good thinking, like.
You were next, ma'am.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I was in a car accident in 2013. I hit a road grader on South 33. And I had dealt with a lot of pain, but I was put on Norco 10s for years, and then just got off of them. But I went on CBD and THC to help me sleep at night with CBD. But I take CBD through the day, but I drive to Gaylord to get this stuff. And people are gonna drive over there to get it regardless, but if it's here in a town, you know, to help us get it here, it helps the town out. Now, without this through my day, because, I mean, you have no idea what my car looked like that day. That road grader pulled out in front of me. And, with herniated disc in my neck, my back, I ended up.
But what you're saying is recreational, right? Are you, not recreational, but medical?
For medical.
Right.
Right, so it's like, but to get off the Norcos, because I was taking 120 a month, and I just stopped them, and then I went to that, and, which helps me a lot better than what that did. But I'm having to drive to Gaylord to get it, and it helps me so much better. I was, with my daughter telling me CBD, I'm thinking, yeah, okay, you know, no way. But, yeah, it is.
But
So-
did you know that they deliver from Alpena?
No.
Okay, they deliver, and there are rules to delivery, but delivery is quite common now.
Do you realize though, with something like that here and the business that are put in a small town, see this town, I've been coming up here since 89, and it has not grown, except for what Chatter's put in here.
Right.
This town has never seen a Subway, has never seen a McDonald's. I mean, Family Dollar and a dollar store. That's it, no fast food.
You'd be out of a job if the McDonald's came in, or Subway.
Right, exactly, yeah, our drive-through. But I mean, it just needs something like that for the people that deal with pain.
So she brings up a really good point. I don't know if the board and the PC are all aware that you can specifically state what uses can be allowed in your township. So we could restrict it, you said people need medicinal use, then maybe we should be thinking about restricting to one medicinal facility. Okay, I get it that people need it, and I get it that it helps people. But we need to be thoughtful about what we're bringing into our, and you had said, you know, it's not fair that they have to drive, okay. So maybe we should, if this, whatever passes, if something goes through, then maybe we should really consider what are we going to allow into this township? What makes sense? What will benefit the people here and help them and not hinder our future generations?
Yeah, because the state is on these places, I mean, big time. And what they have to carry, how much they carry, what comes in. I mean, and they're,
You put your driver's license down on the counter when
As
you
soon
go
as you
in,
walk
they
in.
know who you are.
I've had to understand this quite a bit myself. So, right, it's quite regulated and all that, and that's why it's expensive. There's some other economic issues that I question, but, John Zoller, you have a question?
It's my understanding that the decision to have marijuana has already been made. So discussing about the fact that it is certainly, I'm in favor of medicinal marijuana. I'm also in favor of recreational marijuana. The war on drugs has been going on for 60 years. We still have marijuana in larger quantities than we did back in the 60s. So marijuana is here. It's here to stay. There's nothing we're going to be able to do about it. It's gonna continue to grow. It's a gigantic money-making business. You follow the money. There's no way you're going to stop this from happening. So my point is that what we're here tonight for, as I understand, is we talk a lot about dates and motions and this date and that motion. What it boils down to is we're here to decide, do we want marijuana, which we've already agreed we do we want it in Old Town? And I think we should stick to that question because that's basically what we're talking about. The marijuana dispensaries, the way they operate today, are legal businesses. They're allowed in downtowns and all over the country. There's no reason in the world why you can regulate a marijuana dispensary out of downtown when you can let 6 pizza parlors come in there. It just doesn't make any sense. A marijuana dispensary is as much of a legal and organized business as a pizza parlor. And so when you're trying to regulate that you don't want them in our downtown district, that's like saying we shouldn't have a beauty parlor or we shouldn't have a clinic. So I really think you need to cut to the chase and make a decision about whether or not you want this in downtown and make a decision.
And great point, and the planning commission has been consistent with that. And we've all said, we have nothing against Dan Kent, who was recently on the planning commission, we have nothing against marijuana. It's already been decided, we just have to decide where it goes.
Exactly.
100%, we've been consistent with that. It's just,
Exactly.
So for those
Just
of
where it
us that are
goes.
new here, I don't know what your recommendations have been or are. So for those of us who are not aware of your recommendations, where do you recommend that it's?
The first part, the main ordinance allowed it, only,
let me stop you there, because
Okay.
normally it would come through the planning commission to do this. The board gave the original approval, which excluded Old Town, not the planning commission. Dan Kent, who's on the planning commission, thought that Old Town and C1 should be included.
I'm not even aware of what C1 is, but I'm saying,
I don't
It's,
even
no,
know what
it's easy to be done.
and I'm also getting the feeling that you're starting over tonight. So where do you recommend? Can you just tell me what you're recommending
That's the decision we're gonna make tonight.
after we're all gone?
Well,
You can stay.
no, you can stay. After we adjourn this meeting, we're gonna start a long planning commission meeting, but the first thing we're gonna do is vote on this. So, yeah, but the thing you need to understand is this original motion came from the board, not the planning commission.
You have a question?
Excuse me, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
My name's Doug Katie, I live on Kellyville Road, and my question is, how can you approve this at all when the people voted to opt out? Don't you have to go back to the people and have it voted in? That's what it says in the act, that you need to repetition the people, and you need to have it go back to vote, and the people get to choose whether you opt out or opt in. It sounds like you're trying to go around what the people have already decided.
And Doug, to your point, the zoning currently wouldn't allow the use as was permitted. They have a stop and desist order, and they've been given back their permit. But I've said, and we've heard people on the board also agree with you, that vote was very close. The way I see this happening, my personal thought, and this is my thought, not a recommendation, is if we can accommodate them, if we approve this, they're not accommodated. They can't open up. I think there should be a referendum where the people vote to allow it in that specific place.
That vote was to
Well, it's not
legalize
even that, it's the
statewide
point
vote.
that, from what the act actually says, that when the people decided to opt out, you cannot just let somebody or give them a permit at all.
Doug,
It needs to go back to the people, it's right in the act, very
Doug.
specific.
the vote that the people opted out of was the vote for the legalization in the state of Michigan entirely, not
No,
in the area.
we
Yes, it
voted-
was.
We voted locally. We voted locally to opt in or out. Each township at that time voted. I don't believe one township in this county
That was
voted
for
to
the
opt in.
legalization throughout the state of Michigan. Every county voted. All of
No,
us
there
did.
was another vote. I think you need to go back and look. Each township voted to opt in or opt out.
That vote, Evelyn, just to correct you, that vote wasn't for the state of Michigan, it was township specific.
In 2018?
Correct.
Sounds about right.
Before the state legalized it.
Correct.
And that's why it
That's
opened the
what's
door.
changed.
That's what opened the door.
Right.
Was that medical specific?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was specific to micro businesses, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Different.
I think you need to go back and find that out, because I've talked to a couple lawyers. There's one in particular that works, and actually, I don't know if any of you went to the, Michigan Township Association meeting where she was giving the speech. I think you need to look a little bit closer. You can't, I think you're gonna find out, you're gonna run into a big roadblock, because the people voted to opt out. Each township, each municipality was given that option, and that happened here.
Things
So,
changed
that's all I'm gonna
since
say about it.
What
I think you
year was
better
that?
look at it closer.
I've been around 2018, I believe.
Yeah. You, that was on the state level.
Yeah, we called the county clerk.
Yeah, it was on the state. And the county clerk said,
Legalized was a state vote.
and a lot of
I'll double
laws have
check.
changed since
Double check, because it had, I think the specifics were, the recreational marijuana wasn't even allowed there. I think it came down specifically to medical. In one of the.
Actually, I have it printed somewhere,
Okay.
and it's in my email, so I'll go through it.
But the township itself voted it down at that time, under those conditions.
That board.
But that was,
That board,
was that before the recreational
correct. It was.
Yes, it
marijuana
was.
passed? Which wouldn't the recreational marijuana have,
Change the vote.
yeah, changed the laws, changed the rules as to,
Well, it wasn't a state option at that point.
I don't think the township attorney, nor the county attorney, or NIMCOG would say that would be true.
I don't think you should speak to
They,
them.
they all, we
It'd be
wouldn't
nice if
even
we
be
had
having
attorney.
this discussion if that were true.
Right.
So what we're talking about is something that's already on the table, the ordinance has been passed. Only we're here tonight to discuss really is the zoning. That's it.
Yes. The one thing I want to add, we have Denise Klein here from NAMCOG. Not to put you on the spot, Denise.
You are.
I'm putting you on the spot, right. One of the issues too you have to consider, I was in a township north of Rochester, and my friends are municipal attorneys and people in government. And the municipal attorney for Royal Oak said it was the worst thing they ever did was legalizing it. And all it's resulted in is lawsuits because the areas it can't put in, it wasn't declared, they're saying, well, that's illegal. So the amount of legal fees, it's the Lawyers Full Employment Act. There are a lot of lawsuits going on because of marijuana being allowed and where it's allowed. And that's why we're trying to be so thoughtful about this.
Could you speak to a town closer to us, like Alpena or Gaylord? How it's affecting them, and are they having lawsuits as well?
There was,
Hang on, Denise, can you kind of address this? 'Cause
Yeah,
you
there's
said-
some, I work with the city of Alpena with their marijuana ordinance. There's been lawsuits in Alpena, there's been a couple of them, or they didn't go all the way through the lawsuit, but lawsuits filed.
And weren't you personally sued?
So I just say, I can't speak to the township level vote that got brought up, which it did, I mean, we know that township level vote did happen, so I don't know, that's where my expertise stops, is what, you know, where, the way that affects all of this. I mean, I can answer any questions about the zoning part of it and the licensing. I don't know if it's clearly been explained, but there's really two ordinances that have to be passed to make marijuana legal. One is the licensing ordinance, one is the zoning ordinance. Township board's already adopted the licensing ordinance, that's done. And that's fine, there's nothing wrong with that, that was done properly. So really, you're going back and revoting on the May ordinance, which only had those districts, it didn't have downtown. That's, so you guys can't add downtown.
Right.
They have to vote on what was in front of them in May, because they didn't do that motion right. So they have to go back and fix the motion. All they can vote on is the districts that are on the paper in front of them, which does not include downtown. So they can't add it tonight, right? So they don't have any, they can't, even if they agree, which, you know, you've talked about, that it should be there, you can't add it tonight. You have to vote, yes, we agree it should be in those districts in front of us, and then pass it on to the township board, see what happens.
And if we do that tonight, and this is the township board's proposal that we didn't decide on, we couldn't decide on. So if we decide on it tonight, the original township proposal, the person that was illegally given an application, or
Doesn't fix that problem.
doesn't fix that problem.
So it goes to township board to decide, we like the districts that are in front of us now, but we also want these other two, right? So then it's, they either change it on their own, or I think what the attorney's recommend, and I don't have his letter in front of me, send it back to planning commission, do that over again, you vote again, with thumbs up, comes back to the township board.
That's exactly, and there's a whole 30
So-
Or
days,
it's
30
either
times.
or, is it correct? So when it comes to the township for vote,
Yeah.
and we do wanna make a
So-
change, then what?
So if you say, so here's where it gets tricky. If you say, we wanna make a change, yeah, you're supposed to send it back to planning commission. The reason for that is that they need to go through their process again, because with those districts added, you might get a different group of people in here to give public, that's why they do that. But I don't know what your attorney letter says. I know I read it, but I don't have it in front of me. So that's where you like the district, so you say, okay, we'll pass that, but now we want these other two districts added. So ask him at that point, do they have to have a new public hearing?
Denise, and while I agree with what you're saying, I also look at the state of Michigan. It states that you can have a building in a business district, right?
Right.
In a business district, this is in a business district, irrespective of what zone is considered to be in, it's a legal business, it should be allowed to build there and operate their business.
This
You know,
particular use
is that true or
doesn't,
not?
doesn't work that way at all.
Right,
Okay, so
Yeah.
help me out here so we
Yep.
all have an
Yeah.
understanding.
explain, we've had an analogy made, this is just like somebody that opened up a store for paper clips or for widgets. And it's a Schedule I drug, it's not, you can't even deal with the money until it, you know, they make it a Schedule II drug. It's still an illegal drug nationally. So to compare it to widgets and staples and say it's just another business is a complete distortion of the facts. It's a drug.
It's
Yeah.
been legalized in the state of Michigan.
It's like opening up another bar in town.
Yeah, I disagree with your concept there. It's, the state has recognized it as a legal business. I don't think our planning commission is in a position to deny that.
We're not, we're just.
Explain it to me.
We're just. Yeah. Well, that's regulated too, right? That's not selling widgets. Alcohol is regulated.
You have to have, so that you have to have it by state law listed, the specific types of marijuana businesses in which district. They're just, the state isn't gonna, I mean, that's what they need to see from you guys, is that
Right.
here's the different types of businesses, of the 6 different types, which districts. My question is, again, I don't have your attorney letter in front of me, why isn't he recommending that you vote on both of them?
He is.
He is tonight, so you could vote on the May one and say, we vote to not recommend that one, and then go right to vote for the November one, which does have downtown. Is that what he's saying?
Yeah.
Because Mark's saying that's not what he's saying.
No, that, I have the motion that the lawyer, and he said.
Would you like to see the letter?
I can. I mean, because you've had a public hearing for
Well,
both.
we have.
Both of them
You
have
have
had
to
public
do it.
hearings.
Right. Let's make this real simple. We have the motion that was sent Lindsay, you should have that. The motion was one of two motions. And the attorney said, you're overthinking this to me. He said, this is real simple. You either approve the one that was denied, that came from the board, or you deny it. That's it. We can't
So then
throw
why would
that
you
third
put that in
option
the
in.
letter if you want us to?
Yeah, the letter
do that
says
route?
we should,
Right, the letter covers everything. The letter's the history. The motion was drafted by the attorney.
So history should stay in history?
Yep.
Well,
no.
But the letter
You guys
gives
can over,
his
you guys can over.
recommendation of how to do it.
yeah, letter says, once these actions, there will be 2 proposed zoning ordinance amendments before the township board, if we pass both of them, and then the township board decides which one it wants to enact.
The motion was very specific.
But you talked to the attorney, he said, don't do the November 1st one, do the
Absolutely.
October one.
He said because they're gonna have to do, as Denise said, they're gonna have to do a redo, and it has to go back to the planning commission.
So we vote yes on, if we want it, we vote yes on
So
2,
they
the second one.
Oh, yes on the second one.
If you want it, you vote yes on the second one, which basically says we deny it. And then it's open, and then you can propose something to it.
Wait, you lost me there.
No.
There's no proposing minutes except for minutes.
Hold on, Marva, please.
Okay.
What we're saying, the motion is really clear, and I went through this. The motion is for the one on May 23rd, which excluded those areas that we've already discussed. Or it's we deny it, we basically don't want it. Then the board can come up and say, okay, we're gonna come up with something. The attorney, Graham, has already drafted a motion for the board, which says they want you to approve the original one. And if you wanna change that, you can do so, but you then have to go through the process and send it back to the planning commission. If you wanna get this through as it is, the simplest way it is, continue with the May 23rd one, approve, if we approve that, planning commission approves that, and the board approves it, it's done.
Okay, but if, according to what that letter read, if I'm understanding this, Denise, please clarify.
I think I
It
understand
says,
why.
vote on the May 1st. If that fails, then go on and move, vote on the November.
It doesn't say vote, here's why I think, so again, I'm not an attorney, but I'm interpreting. It actually says the planning commission must complete the provisions, this is in reference to the November 1st one, it doesn't say vote. Complete the provisions of the new zoning ordinance amendment that was subject to the November public hearing. Once the provisions are completed, then the planning commission must pass a motion. I think the reason he's saying the provisions, the ordinance was not completed is because the districts were left blank.
Yeah, that's correct.
That's why. That's why he doesn't want you to vote yet, because when you did that public hearing, there were no districts listed. So you had, so that makes sense. So vote on the May one. You guys choose whether to accept it or not. You gotta hold a new public hearing in order to list downtown, list Old Town and C1. That's why. So,
Thank you.
interpreting.
Thank you.
So again, all we're deciding, all the planning commission is deciding, with the board, is the areas where it's allowed, that's it.
That's the May.
The May
May
23rd,
ordinance.
yep, the May ordinance, that's what we're determining.
I'd like to make one more point.
Go ahead, John.
In view of the fact that the planning commission works at the discretion of the township board and as an advisory committee, how far can you go with your advice before the board can just say, thank you for your advice, but we're gonna do what we want?
You're always allowed to do that, but you're in legal jeopardy.
And how is that?
Because if you go against the planning commission and somebody says, hey, I don't agree with the zoning you agreed, and Denise can attest to this, then there's a lawsuit. And they said, what's the basis of the lawsuit? Well, the planning commission, turned this down, and the board came up with something else.
But aren't you missing the fact that the planning commission is an appointed committee? You're not elected officials. The township board are elected officials, and they're in charge of making the decisions, whether they like the ones you recommend or not. They still have the authority to override your recommendation. You are strictly an appointed committee, you are not an elected official.
We're-
They have the authority, and I think this has dragged on so long now already, that in the very beginning, when this whole thing started, I think the township board should have just said, look, planning commission, well, we're kind of having a hard time agreeing where to go with this, so we're gonna accept your recommendation, but we're gonna deny it, and we're gonna do what we want. And I think that's where we stand, and I think that's what they ought to do.
Yeah,
I think you
we
guys
failed
are
to make a
overstepping your
recommendation.
bounds.
That's the problem.
The whole thing started off with, and again, I know some board members will disagree with me, and I know Evelyn hates hearing this, we both have 25 years of experience in doing this. I think that the board made a recommendation for zoning, and they couldn't. Zoning and Enabling Act, which you know, and you should have read, says that the planning commission is entirely responsible for zoning, has to come through planning. It came to us after the fact. We weren't involved in the process, I wish we had been. So then we made a recommendation, then it went to the board.
You're still
But
missing
at
the
the end of
point.
the, no, at the end of the day, John, it's like House of Representatives and the Senate. It's checks and balances. The planning commission checks the board and vice versa. The board ultimately can override us.
Keep
If
in
the
mind-
planning commission comes up with a plan and to take to the township board and they say, we've decided, because the public even wants it, that we need 10 strip clubs in downtown Atlanta. And then it goes to the township board. The township board goes, well, you know, that's a crazy idea, it's probably make a lot of money and stuff, but we don't think we are in a position to approve 10 strip clubs in downtown Atlanta. We deny your recommendation. And that's it. There's no more question, no more argument.
They can do that, but 10 strip clubs have never passed the planning commission, I guarantee you that.
The what?
10 strip clubs have never passed the planning
Well, I'm
commission.
just using
Maybe
an
the next time.
example that
Well, like John says, he's got a valid point. If it was 10 and the board decided we only want 3, then they could pass it. So you're right.
yeah, they could do it that way.
Denny Davis?
Yes, I'd kind of like to counter what John is saying. The planning commission in my mind has tried to listen to the public. And to my knowledge, going through, being on the planning commission, you go through the public, you listen to them, you have hearings, you have whatever. You're not an authoritarian process, you're listening to the public. If you go with what you say, and a lot of people, we've heard it here before, I don't care what you do, we're gonna do this. You're not listening to the public. I don't care whether you voted for, where you get your money, whatever. We're all here for the public benefit. That's the only way I look at it. If you don't look at it as such, I don't care how long it takes. Because a lot of the folks are saying, there's this problem, there's that problem, it's a blessing here, look at the money we're gonna get, look how well we're gonna be, just whatever. But the only thing it is, to counteract what is being said, pushing things through is not good for the public either. Thank you.
I think not only the planning commission talks to the public, there's only 5 of you there, and there's 5 of you there. Don't you think these people talk to the public?
And we did. We actually had an invite, invited the public about 2 weeks before the planning commission had their hearing. And in that, there were several people, the room was full, and we had 60 some odd signatures for having that here, as opposed to none for the other side. And the way I look at
Oh,
it,
we had
that's,
20 people here for the other side
yeah,
too.
well, yeah, but what I'm saying, Evelyn, is that the group of people in here is not all of Briley Township.
Correct.
It's a small portion, it's a representative portion, and that's what it is. It certainly doesn't encompass the entire township.
Could I ask you a question, Phil, on that? On that petition that you've had those signatures? The people who are against that wouldn't sign it because it was a specific question. Do you want it? It didn't have, do you want it, do you not want it?
Can't answer that, Dan, because all it was, it said, do you
Yeah,
want?
I see,
And that's
so
the way
that's
it
what I'm
was-
saying.
That's the way it read, and those are
And
people
so
that
it's
spoke
easy
up.
to get it.
Well, and that would be that
Anybody that
position.
wanted to have had one that said no, could have presented the same thing and didn't.
If you wanted a no petition, then you have to
Right.
go on.
But I mean, to get an honest amount of signatures, you would do on the same sheet,
Close to
do you want, or are you for, or are you against?
almost
And I'd like to bring up just one point. Prior planning commission, my vote was mainly influenced by the fact that in the board's ordinance, the whole part about charging these businesses $5,000 a year to a 501c3 nonprofit. Is anyone in this room affiliated with a 501c3?
But is it active?
It hasn't been active for the last 3 years, we've done nothing with it.
I don't think any business, and Ken, your business owner too, having any township tell you that your business, that you have to donate $5,000 a year, it's hard enough to make a buck nowadays as it is. Same. Well,
But that's written in
no, I
the-
read the reports on the cost of marijuana, the market is flooded, their profit margins are really dwindling.
But that was written in
I
by
don't-
the state of Michigan.
Can I
So,
respond
in
to
order
that?
to encourage, please.
No, hold
Can I
on,
respond
are
to
you,
that?
hold on.
The
Are you done?
situation
Well,
with-
hold
on, just, hold on.
My whole point of
Finish
that
up.
is, as businesses having to pay that, they're already paying money to the state, they're paying $5,000 to the township. If you wanna bring businesses in, just like are you gonna charge a gas station or a restaurant $5,000 a year to a nonprofit? No, you would never get anybody here. So, I think that's something the board should really look at, rescinding that section of that ordinance.
There was nothing in there, Dan, in all reality. The board, sitting here, does not have any word in that decision whatsoever. That's the story.
That's through the state.
We don't.
I mean, the state charges over
Right,
$50,000
as far as
for
the
the
state, yeah.
license.
I'm talking about the
Oh, yeah,
501c3.
And that's
and the
what I-
501c is through the state.
No.
No,
It's not?
No, it's not.
that was something that I asked to be put in there.
Oh, okay.
I asked that to be put in
Alright.
there because I asked our attorney, is this something we can do? And he said, absolutely yes, it's done in several communities. This is not something
Okay.
that the board should.
I look at it as a way to
Steal money.
funnel
That's not what
money
it is. No.
into people's pockets.
There's
So,
no funneling there, it's all done, that decision's made out there by that store owner. Had nothing to do with
Well,
us.
I'd asked Jason that at one of our planning commission meetings,
He's
and
been
he said
at-
it was very unusual.
And he
No,
also
he-
said that
he
it was
was at
his
it because
choice
he
and it
was-
would probably go to a public foundation or a local sports team. So he
Alright.
did say
But
that.
it's just something that when you put that as a requirement,
Yep.
it's great if any business, if we wanna donate to anybody, it should be of our own free will as a
And
business.
you can, and when they signed their contract, they did exactly that.
Yeah,
So that's not the way that was.
All right, we're about out of time. John, one last,
Well, I was just gonna say that it was my understanding as the president of the 501c3 that it was up to the dispensary who their $5,000 went to.
Right.
It wasn't up to the board to make the decision that
Correct.
this business gets it or that.
Oh, you
business
think they're
gets
not
it.
gonna grease the
So it's
palms of the people that approved it?
dispensary that makes that decision for that
I wouldn't want it.
$5,000.
I mean,
all right. Lisa, you had something?
It is, so if something goes through tonight, or whenever, inevitable, somebody's gonna keep pushing, are we going to set up some parameters, like, we're only gonna allow this type of or this type of facility? You have 6 facilities, right? So different types, different types.
That would have been in the licensing ordinance already, correct? What facilities and how many?
Okay, is there any
Yes.
That's
restrictions?
in your
in
license, so
licensing?
that's already been voted on.
Already
Is there
I'd like
any
to go
restrictions in the
downtown.
licensing at all?
Uh,
Huh,
yes, there are,
okay. And,
and that has to do with zoning, that puts restrictions on it.
okay.
Other
And
than that,
so when a
other than
proposed,
that, the state says that they're a legal business, they have a right to open a door.
but we
it's
don't
only a
have to
question of
have
where-
house every type of facility, every type of marijuana thing there is, okay? That's what
No.
I'm asking you.
No,
If there is some parameters put into place,
the
so we're
state,
doing a limit.
State does
the
that.
state sets those parameters, we have nothing to do with it.
You,
No.
so the licensing ordinance can say how many.
Right,
Yes,
You have to say in your zoning what type
There
of,
we go.
what type of facility per district.
right,
So is it gonna be dispensaries, retailers
growing.
in these districts, growers and
Yes.
processors in these districts?
so that'll be hashed out at a
That's
later
in,
date.
whatever is in the amendment, or the zoning amendment in front of them.
That's what we're
voting
It
on.
says that.
Yes,
Is that specified what you're going to allow in those
And it's
specific?
a
Yes, it does.
dispensary, correct?
Okay,
So this is tonight what the zoning commission would like to
all
have.
right, and everybody's done their homework and done their research, and they understand what it's gonna do, impact us economically. That it's not all,
I hope so.
rainbows and balloons, there's definitely,
Okay, we have to adjourn to, get on with the next meeting.
okay.
Well, Marva
One more-
had one thing to say, and she
Oh.
never got to speak.
If,
One last
the
comment.
planning commission, I
If he's
think
been
if they haven't
inactive,
We
already.
got three last comments here.
I just pulled that up 2 weeks ago, it's still active. What's 501?
It's active, but there's no activity in it.
No, I'm just gonna take a breath. Who are you talking about? John and.
I just
More
like
than
to
innovative.
All right,
recommend to the board, if they haven't done it, to be looking at the growers. This thing of allowing growers in residential districts, I think is wrong. So if you're gonna start being serious about it,
It's excluded from R1 and R2.
Yeah,
is that true? Is it?
yeah, no, it's right there, growers only in ag and industrial.
So we're just, right now, we're just talking about a dispensary in Old Town.
So
That's
we're,
what,
oh no, that,
What are you talking about grow operations?
grow, it's all in there.
you're gonna allow one on. Just a dispensary or grows?
Not right now.
The dispensaries in this area and grows in this area.
Okay,
I mean, there's two different things, but it's in that.
so just Old Town Center right now for dispensary.
Correct.
And you should label how
Well,
many.
that's,
Discussion, we can't hear it.
all right,
And Marva,
We're in the court.
hold on. As of right now, you can't have it in Old Town,
Right,
under that one right there.
right, I understand.
All right,
There's a discussion on the
hold
floor.
on,
I did more work than.
hold on, hold on, hold on.
Marva had
We got a little bit of order. Marva had something and then we got to go, so the next meeting can come on.
I'm done.
You're
I
done?
wanna say
All right,
thank you to- You answered my question.
all right, thank you.
You know?
I would like the
When did
motion
you
to
print
adjourn.
I will make
I'll
that
make a
motion.
motion.
Second?
I'll
All
second.
right.
When did you print this?
About 2 weeks ago.
Who made that second?
Yeah.